I had a 1-bedroom apartment that I ended up trapping that place out. That place ended up had people tweakers coming over there and stuff like that, and it wasn't a tweaker neighborhood. So they the owner of the apartment, owner of the apartment complex found out pretty quick, and she was like, "Nah, she wasn't having that." She said, "You got to move out." So I moved out and I lived with my older sister for a while. And my older sister lived in Antioch on G Street, and that was right by the city park where I used to live, you know. And I took everything I could with me from the apartment and ended up staying with her for a while. But that didn't do well either, because she was letting me use her car, and that was not a good thing to do. You ended up using her car, and I was going out to pick up drugs, you know, right before she'd have to go to work, you know, and stuff like that. My niece and my nephew were living there too, and it just wasn't a good. It wasn't good. I ended up having to go back though and do more time, and
to the prison again. You said.
What's that?
You said you had to go back again to prison.
Yeah. This time I ended up going back for 4 years, and I ended up getting another strike. I ended up having 2 strikes.
What'd you go for that time?
The same thing.
4 years. Right?
Yeah. Ended up going back in, and they
not to cut you off. You were wrecking the houses still, or?
Yeah. This time it had gotten worse, because the place I broke into, the people were home, and they were sleeping when I broke into the garage, you know, and took a whole bunch of stuff. But they ended up finding out because I left my fingerprints, you know, and which wasn't too smart. And so I ended up getting busted for that. I ended up going back, and I remember they gave me another strike, and I was like, 2 strikes, that's seems kind of bad, you know, but figured, what was I going to do, you know? And so I ended up going, I got out this time, and this time I ended up paroling. And
not to cut you off, how was the 4 years? Smooth?
No, the 4 years, prison got worse each time. It got worse and worse because they're trying to reform prison so much nowadays, and they're trying to make it better. But the more they make it better, they make it worse for the people who are there, because they have these things now called 50-50 yards. Or 50-50 yards are like the people who are rats, or people who tell, and people who are dropouts from gangs and stuff like that. They all can go to the same yard that people who don't do any of that stuff are on. So it makes it a whole lot worse, because you've got people that, this dude across the yard could have ratted on you, and he's going to be on the same yard as you. That doesn't, you know, and the only thing they don't do is they don't put child molesters or rapists on the same yard. They can't do that. So they put them in their, you know, their spot. But the other PCs, the ones who are like dropouts and rats, are now on these yards with normal people. So
did that get pretty violent, or?
Yeah. I mean, it did when they first started bringing them in. When they first started busting them in, it made it a whole lot worse. You know, the last time I went through, which was about 5 years ago, that was the worst trip to prison I've ever. That's probably the worst spot I ever encountered. I had to go to the Pelican Bay, the hole. Let me backtrack a little bit. So I ended up going to. This is when I was 40 years old. Yeah, 42. So I was working at I had done construction. I had a daughter in the meantime. I had a little daughter named Gracie. She lives in Arizona right now with my ex-grandma or ex-mom and dad-in-law. The ex and me didn't work out too well. We right when we had the kids, she decided that she was going to show her true colors, and she started using right away. And I had cleaned up at this time. I was totally clean. When I got out of prison last time, I decided I was going to clean up. I went to this program, and it didn't work out too good for me. I ended up going to getting kicked out of that program. I got in a fight at the program, and ended up getting kicked out of the program and going into the streets right away, right? And I ended up saying, you know what? I had an epiphany, and I said, enough's enough. And so I told my mom that, hey, you know what, Mom? I'm going to go get help. I'm going to get help, okay? Screw this. So I did. I went and I got help. I went to DVR in Concord, Clayton, and I was sober there. Those were probably some of the best years of my life. I was sober 5 years. 5 years I stayed sober for it. Till I had my kid, and then my ex, now ex, then we got married, went down to the church house and everything, got married. I met her at the program. So she started taking pills when she got pregnant with Gracie. After she had Gracie, she started taking Vicodins, and I found them in her purse, and I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, I just pop them here and there, for the pain. I'm like, I used to be addicted to these before. I know already, what time it is. And so I said, screw it. She's going to do them. I'm going to do them too. So I did them with her. We both got addicted to them and found out I couldn't stop taking the pills. So I tried drinking. I tried drinking like a fish until I could quit. So I quit taking the pills. Couldn't quit taking them because if you quit taking them, you get sick. So I started doing meth. So I figured, hey, screw it, I'll do meth. I couldn't stop drinking now, and I couldn't stop doing the pills, so I do meth. That's going to help, right? No. So I started doing meth, and that ended up bad real quick. I ended up catching a case, going back to prison, and
not to cut you off, you went back to prison this time. This was the 4 years, or this was after the 4 years?
This is after the 4 years,
okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
After 4 years. I ended up going back this time, doing another 4 years.
But no strike?
With 2 strikes. I had 2 strikes at the time.
But you said you had two strikes when you got the 4 years.
Yeah. When I got the 4 years, 2 strikes, yeah.
So this last time...
They didn't give me another strike for it.
Okay,
No.
go ahead.
They didn't give me another strike for it. They got me for receiving stolen property. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up going back another 4 years, though. And when I got out this time, I went to a program out in Oakland, actually. It's one I went to before, in the interim of running around and doing stuff, and it was actually the time before when we were talking about the 4 years I did when I got the strike. That time, when I had gotten out, I went to this program, and I ended up going back to it this time, and it was cool. It was a parolee-based program. It's not a drug and alcohol program. It's a place where you go and you they've got a laundromat there for you. They've got your meals 3 times a day. You've got your own little room you share with somebody else. All you have to do is look for a job and find work. And when you find work, you can go out and work. You can give them a work schedule, and you can go out on the weekends and see your loved ones. It was cool. So
make sure you stay clean or anything, like test you.
They what?
They don't test you and whatnot as well?
No, your parole officer will come by there and test you and stuff like that. But they did test you in the program. But I found ways around it real quick. I would always be the one that I'm not going to start using until I find out a way to get away with it. And I found out how to get away with it real quick. I had a bladder bag, and I would get a bladder bag and I would put it around my person, and it would have a little tube coming out of it. And I heard coffee, water, and urine work, or coffee, water, and toilet water and granular coffee to turn the water yellow. Sounds funny, but it works because it's got a pH balance in it, and the coffee's not enough for it to show off on the test. So I'd heard that the toilet water worked from a guy that was in the program, and I was dirty one time, and I was going to the test at the parole office, and after I'd heard this from a guy, and I said, you know what? And I had a lady parole officer, so she didn't come in all the way with me. She stood at the door, and I remember dipping a cup in the toilet and just screwing the cap on and saying, screw it, I'll try it. Giving it to her, and it worked. and I was golden from that point forward. I said, I'll find a bladder bag, and I can use and get away with it.
You ever
and I
did. Wisdom Editor?
Yeah, that's kind of like what it is. Yeah, kind of like yeah.
You could have done a patent that.
Yep, right, right. I could have. And then I ended up going from that from using pretty much every day. I'd use in a program. If they were going to test me in a program, I'd pass. If they were going to test me, and my parole officer was going to test me, I'd pass. Everything was good. I was working a lot of hours. I've gotten a job as a construction superintendent, and I was working like 6 days a week, and that was good in itself, and it was bad in itself too, because I had money, but I had money to spend it on drugs and stuff like that. I ended up getting a spot on the other side. I was renting a room out at the same time I was in a program, so I had a place to go on the weekends. My mom and dad had moved up to Red Bluff then, so I really didn't have any family down here. I would go and I would get I'd go to this room and I would just meet different women and have them, take them over on the weekends or whatever, go do whatever, and then I would also I would have this place. I'd have a place to go where buddies could go hang out and stuff like that. And then, Monday through Friday, I'd go back to the program, And so that was kind of cool, and stuff. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't cool.
Looking back at it,
it wasn't cool. Yeah. And what slowed me down? What slowed me down this time was my dad.
And you mean slow you down as in the sense of using?
Yeah.
And you mean currently or?
Yeah, a lot. I don't think. I would say that that was probably a pivotal point in my life right there, where like something's gotta kind of change. My dad passed away probably in February, and that was pretty tough.
Sorry, I feel lost again, bro.
That was tough. Yeah.
Have you not used since then?
Yeah. Well, no, I have here and there, but not as much as I used to. Nowhere close to what I was, and that was and my mom, she tried as hard as she can, to love me from where she can. Makes it difficult, when you're an addict.
I was gonna ask you, did your addiction maybe mess up your relationships with family or even your kid?
Yeah, my sister and me, we don't really talk anymore. My younger sister, we don't talk very much. When she married my best friend and kind of took him away from me, we kind of stopped talking to each other really a whole lot. After she had done working at the restaurant, me and her just didn't keep really close contact. Me and the older one, I still see her. We're cordial to each other, but I don't call her on the weekends or nothing like that, or call her during the week or nothing like that. My mom's the only one I really call. I call my mom and talk to her every night. I love my mom. She's a good woman. And that was tough, losing my dad. That kind of brought everything back into perspective, like something's got to change, or there's got to be something more out there, And so I'm looking for it, I'm looking for something more out there.
I was gonna say, what are some of the things that you're trying to do to kind of keep yourself on track? Now, I know you said your father obviously kind of passing, kind of is pushing you in the right direction. But what are you doing besides,
Looking for, I've been looking for work, looking for like a better job than what I'm doing now, but more or less like trying to find a place where I can feel rooted, where I feel like I fit in, a place where like I'm not looking to go out and get high or whatever, a place where I can just be myself, around. And that's not easy to do around here. It is in Oakland. The one place I found able to do that is in Oakland. Oakland, there's a lot of different varieties of diverse people out here, and it's cool, People don't look at you like where you came from. The cops really don't mess with you out here, and I like it. That's why I like it out here. Aside from that, it's like, I kind of took a step back and took a look at things and was like, if things aren't going to change, then I need to change, and change is what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to take myself and put myself in a better spot than, I was 6 months ago or a year ago. In order to do that, I know that I've got to make changes and stuff like that in my life. If I want to see my kid again, I got to keep doing good, and that's not easy either,
When have you last maybe spoke to your kid, and how's that been based on the
I have spoken to my kid. I've spoken to her quite a bit. When I was in prison the last time, like I was saying, it was hard the last time I went to prison because I went to the Pelican Bay SHU for 2.5 years. I got stuck down there during the COVID.
Shit.
When COVID happened, I got stuck up there. And the SHU is, if you don't know anything about that, it's one of the hardest. It's the hardest place in California where they're gonna send you. That's it. And it's where they send all the mess ups. I got in trouble in prison because my bunkie was prospecting for the AB, and there was this guy that had to go, and we ended up going to roll up this dude, and got away with it, got rid of everything, you know. Somehow they told us that, you know, they told the guards that somebody told the guards on us. They came and, like, we thought we had gotten away scot-free. 3 o'clock in the morning, guards come hit our cell. My bunkie, he's got a, asked him, they put us in a dummy box. A dummy box is a cage that is just the same size as your body, same width as your body, but you can only stand up in it. You can't kneel down in it. And they put us both in dummy boxes right next to each other. And I remember asking my bunkie, I'm like, you got rid of everything, right? And he said, yeah. He said, but there's one more piece in there, but they're not going to find it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah. He's like, it's good though. They come out and they had the piece right there. And even though it wasn't the one we used, they thought it was. Well, my bunkie's getting ready to get out. And the way it works in prison is if you're getting ready to get out, unless you have more charges, they got to release you. So that was not enough time for him to go to court if I waived time. So when they come see me about the charges, I have to waive time pending a DA referral, which means if I waive charges pending a DA referral, we're waiting for the DA to pick it up. And it could take months for the DA to pick it up. So he'll get out in the meantime.
He'll be out.
So that's what I did. I waived it pending a DA referral. That got me sent to, first they sent me to the adjustment center in San Quentin, and I'm working out in the yard, and I asked this guy, they have guys in cages on the yard. You're in your own cage on the yard. That's your yard. There's like 20 cages out in the yard, and that's your yard time. And so I go out there, and the guy across from me, I ask him, he's a white guy, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? He says, we're getting ready to bust down. He's all, you're gonna bust down with us, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's all, how much time did you bring down? And I'm like, man, just 4 years, you know. And I said, how much time you bring down? And he says, I'm on death row. I said, what? I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, this is where they send the overflow. So if you get in trouble on death row and you get sent to the SHU, that's where you go. So that was a trip. And then going from there, and them coming to tell me one morning, you got an hour to pack up your stuff, you're going to Pelican Bay. I'm going to Pelican Bay for what? You know, and they said, no, that's where you're going. They don't tell us anything, they just tell us where you're going. That's where you're going. So I went to Pelican Bay, and that place was hard. That was a hard place, especially during the COVID, because we were locked down the whole time. 23 and a half hours out of the day, you're in your cell by yourself.
23 and 1. On
concrete, and on a concrete slab with a mattress about that big, you know, and that was tough. I mean, people go crazy in there real quick, and that was pretty tough to do. I made it though. I made it through it. Persevered, got over it, got out, and you know, and now this was the last time I went, and the whole time I had been like writing my kid and talking to her and stuff like that every once in a while, and I get a letter from like my mother-in-law. It was my mother-in-law, and it told me that she was moving to Oregon when they retired, which means that Gracie would probably go with her. Well, Oregon's not that bad; it's not that far, you know. Okay, that's cool, you know. I ended up finding out when I get out. Mom and Dad didn't know this either. The way they did it was kind of messed up. They ended up not going to Oregon. They ended up going, and my ex had moved down to Arizona. My ex had an open CPS case against her for Gracie, because when I was in prison one of the times, she ended up getting Gracie taken away because there was dope inside the house. The older kid that she had, that was me, my stepdaughter, Delana, ended up calling the CPS worker and telling her that, hey, there's dope. Mom was doing dope inside the house, which was probably a good thing, you know, that, and they came and they removed, you know, the kids from her and ended up having an open CPS case. Well, that being said, in California, there's no open CPS case. Or there's an open CPS case, excuse me. In Arizona, there's not. So my mother-in-law moves down to Arizona instead of Oregon. They decide they're not going to move to Oregon. They're going to move to Arizona now. And it so happens they're living not too far away from my ex. So now my ex can go over there and see her whenever she wants.
Oh, plan. Yeah.
And I was pissed off when I got out. I was mad about it. And the more and more I think about it, though, the more and more it's like, what's best for Gracie, you know? And she's happy, you know. She's a happy kid. She loves life, you know, and it's good seeing her like that. So if that's the way it has to be, then that's the way it has to be, you know. so I still talk to her. I still tell her I love her, you know, and stuff like that, and all that, you know. And I saw her not too long ago, probably about maybe, well, it was a little while ago. It was about maybe a year ago, last time they came up here, and I was able to spend some time with her, and that was really cool. But in the meantime, it's like what I said was, looking for, you know, the place where I belong, where I fit in, you know, and that's been what my outlook on things have been like lately, you know, just trying to find out where do I fit in, where do I stay at, you know, where am I at, you know, in life. Sometimes it takes a daily reminder, you know, to remind myself, you know, to tell myself, this is where I'm at, this is where I have to, you know, this is where I have to be, this is where I want to be, or this is where I will be, you know, and I'm not where I want to be, you know, yet. And how does that factor in, you know? So, that being said, you know, that's pretty much everything in a nutshell. You know, I know it seems like a lot, but
That's all good. Now, tell me this: what do you feel like is some of maybe your biggest regrets in life?
My biggest regret is my kid. I wish I would have spent more time with her. I wish I wouldn't have. Wish I would have spent more time with my dad. Wish I would have spent more time with my family. You know, just in general. And I wish I would have never picked up. I wish I would have never. If that's one thing I could tell somebody out there who's struggling or who's dealing with addiction, don't pick up. It's horrible. It'll take you down roads you don't want to be. You know, and take away things you don't want to have taken away from you. Sad life.
At this point in your life, again, what do you feel like is some of your maybe biggest fears? And how old are you now, currently?
I am 47.
47, okay.
My biggest fears in life would be not being able to see my kid again before I die. Or going back to prison. I don't want to go back to prison. You know, I don't want to go back to prison. If you've been there, you know, and you know what it's like, you don't want to go back. It's horrible.
And for you, catching another strike would be
a third strike.
Wouldn't that
strike
out? Wouldn't that be bad? Yeah, okay.
Yep. And so that would be hard going back right now. That would be really hard. You know, especially with my mom, my dad just passing and stuff like that, and leave my mom. That wouldn't be right. And one of my biggest hopes, though, is to be able to live close to my mom, to where I can see her more often. She lives up on her own right now, up in Red Bluff, and that's like 3.5, 4 hours away. And the only one that's really next to her is my sister. My older sister lives like kind of close to her now, but that's kind of it's tough. Not, you know, talking to her every night is good, but I want to see her. You know, I miss my mom.
You'd be with her, yeah.
I'm my mama's boy, so that's kind of tough. But that's one of my biggest hopes, is to spend more time with my mom, maybe move closer to her. You know, I'd love that. And maybe getting my own spot, you know, settling down, you know. That'd be cool.
That's pretty much it, brother.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep.
Thank you for your story, too. I definitely appreciate that
No
a
problem.
lot.